All right. Welcome everyone to the Serious Angler podcast, where as always, our main course for you guys will be talking and hopefully teaching you more about bass fishing. And of course, that comes with some rabbit holes here and there. Whether you guys are here to learn or just hear some bass and banter, you guys are in the right spot. As always, I'm your host, Bailey Eichbrett, and we have a great episode for you guys today. We are joined by Mr. Jamie Bruce, another angler from the Great White North. And we're going to be talking a lot about adjusting from the north to southern fisheries, but this can apply to any of you guys that, regardless of where you are in the country, and you're going to another region, another new fishery, another location just that has a new diverse lakes, fisheries, things like that, where you can help adjust yourself prior to going there and getting on the water and trying to learn that body of water. That's obviously a lot different than what you're used to. This is a great one where we talk about that. We talk about, especially for some North guys, the wintertime, it's everyone down south is fishing while we have ice in the lakes, and talking about keeping up with bait trends, learning about new applications and techniques, while we're not able to be on the water. This can apply for those in the South too, in regards to learning some of these new techniques, staying up on top of trends, learning how to rig some of that stuff. We get into a little bit of the koiki talk and much more. We have a lot of that with Jamie on this one, a lot of juice in regards to mindset and how he approaches new bodies of water, new techniques, and figures things out when he's about 20 hours away from just about every single lake, which is just, when he digs into that, it's crazy. But before we get into that episode, obviously, no Deacon, no Andy on today's episode, riding solo for this one and potentially the next couple episodes. So you guys are stuck with me. Um, One thing I want to do say is thank you guys again to the folks that made it down to the Bassmaster Classic. Said hello. It was great seeing all of you guys. Trying to catch up on that as we are cranking out some episodes here. Obviously, we have Jamie this week. We had Luminetti with a bonus episode last week. We have new episodes coming up. We got Tucker Smith in the next couple of weeks, Logan Parks, Andrew Benke will be next week. We got some real biology episodes coming your way. Just the support we've had here in the podcast has been awesome. So appreciate you guys tenfold for all of that. And I want to say one quick thing. As we've always been positive on this show, pushing the positive message, as negativity is just, it's been lame, especially here in the fishing industry, where some folks try to seem to push the negative narrative, and it's just dumb in my eyes. Does nobody any good. And just want to say, if you're seeing anything out there, it's not worth your time. You can choose to see positive or choose to see negative. And here we choose to see the positive side of things. And the sport is in a great spot, especially seeing the classic and seeing how alive bass fishing is. And shout out to Mr. Dave Mercer for not only being the GOAT of MCs and doing a great job with the classic as always, but also a great episode with Bassmaster Classic champion Dylan Nutt. Encourage you guys to go and listen to that episode. Um, just feeling good about our sport, and we're headed in the right direction. Obviously, there's always things to work on, things to improve, but a great episode nonetheless. Before we get into the episode with Jamie, a couple things for you guys. As always, well, we try to anyway, is we have the business from the bass boat segment. And that is some of our industry news, products, things like that, that are going around, tournament news, industry news. So we try to stay on top of that. Some weeks are quiet, some weeks are obviously jam packed. But as always, this segment is brought to you by our friends over at Rec Lending. And if you've not seen the previous episode from this one with Jamie, Deacon had on Todd from Rec Lending to talk about the current state of the boating industry, bass boat brands that are out there, things to look for when buying a boat, finance rates, especially with all this craziness happening in the world right now. But if you have a boat looking to refinance, or you're looking to buy a new boat, or getting into your first boat, make sure you guys call the folks over at Rec Lending. It'd be much worth your time to do so, just to make sure you guys are getting the right rate, making things as affordable as possible to go get that new toy and enjoy your time on the water. Um, with that, another win by Bank Shaw. I don't think anyone's surprised. One on Wheeler Lake. Not surprised in the slightest. That UNA bass team is racking up the trophies right now. And if you know what I mean, Dylan Nutt, Carter Nutt, Trip Berlinski, Bank Shaw, I think they're all on the same UNA team, which is just unfathomable to even think about. Might be one of the greatest college bass fishing rosters. We'll have to pitch it over to Ken Duke and see if we're correct in that, but It's pretty dang good. With that, I don't know if you guys have seen, but Zeman actually put out a pretty cool special, kind of like a I haven't watched it fully yet, but kind of like a documentary style deal on the chatterbait, which is really dang cool. Really awesome use of marketing, and just talking about the history and the revolution of the chatterbait. Go listen, go watch that. Highly encourage that. Also, if you've missed it, Garmin launched a new 360 transducer, which is I'm still kind of a little bit confused on it. I gotta do some more reading on it because it's supposed to integrate with live and kind of give you a double view of their 360 and live, but it's not like Humminbird 360 where it works nonstop for you. You have to basically engage it to work and to refresh. It's kind of interesting deal. We'll get Deacon on here and talk a little bit more about that on the next episode. Some of this new tech stuff. We might get a specialist on here to kind of dig into that and kind of like the sonar update of 2026, if you will. But some interesting things from around the industry, especially with some things not being able to come over right now because of current world affairs, but also prices rising on things like that. And the bait trend is just nuts, which we talk a little bit about that with Jamie too. And speaking of baits, right now, Omnia Fishing, as always, every single show, guys, down below in the YouTube description or the podcast description, we always have links to the current sales going on at Omnia Fishing or links to some of the new arrivals that are there or baits that we talked about in the episode. We always leave it there for you guys to go and take advantage of. You can always use code Serious10 on all your orders to save some money, especially for your pro members. It's always an asset there to do that too, because you save money and also rack up rewards to then you have free money to go buy more baits after the fact. So we always have that in there. I just saw recently they added the new Shimano's Zodius rods. They added to the new arrivals page, as well as the pro sales. If you're a pro member, there's a sales page specifically for that. There's a lot of stuff still on there. And then lastly, if you're not using the app in regards to Omnia Pro with the mapping layers, they added a new update. And the new update is one, you have a new measurement layer. I know for me, I've been using a combination of a few different apps, but I also have Google Maps, which allows you to have a measuring device so I can map out how far certain distances are away from ramps and locations and try to build out my day. Now you have that in the Omni app, so you can do that in one spot, which is nice. They added new tide stations as well as water level stations. So that is some of the new stuff for that. I'm going to play around with that, but especially for folks that you guys have fluctuating water, things like that. That's a big advantage for you guys. And then lastly, again, this is the time of year to use that historical water temperature layer. The spring is that time, especially for me. It's when I'm using big time right now, especially up in the north, trying to find where that warmer water's at, trying to find where the creek mouths are at. That can all be pretty telling and help make your day even better. So make sure you guys check that out. Use our code, save yourself some money. And I think that's everything that I have. Lastly, if you're watching this, you can see I'm wearing a Mount Bassmore hoodie. Literally, it's Mount Rushmore with largemouth heads on it. If you guys want to get any of our lifestyle apparel or podcast apparel, we've had a few people ask where they can go represent the podcast. It's SeriousAnglerNetwork.com. Again, the link down below, whether you're listening or watching. If you guys want to get some of our apparel, go down below. We have a fresh restock of bass boat hats on there as well. We do have kayak merch coming too for my kayak anglers. So be on the lookout for that. And I think that is about it. So without further ado, we're going to hop into today's episode with Mr. Jamie Bruce. All right. Well, here, Mr. Jamie Bruce. Jamie, looks like you're coming into us from a hotel room. We were just talking offline, some lovely Wi-Fi issues, which is always seems to be the biggest hurdle when on the road. But man, thanks for joining us. How are you?
Good, man. You caught me at the perfect time. I just left the Toronto Sportsman's show, and I've got a work thing tomorrow and Wednesday. So I've got this is like the one. I feel like I'm at a Holiday Inn Express. I feel like I'm at a damn spa. I've never had this much time in the last 5 years to chill out. Like went and floated around in the hot tub. Got to go to the gym, just ripping coffees here. So I'm doing good, man. I'm like, I got everything in me but the cucumbers in my eyeballs.
Yeah. Pampered.
Sure.
I like it.
No, pumped to be on.
Well,
I'm on the road a lot and I listen all the time. So I'm
appreciate that, man.
glad I got the tap from you boys.
Yeah, well, dude, it's been likewise. We always tune into your shows on YouTube and things like that with some of the guests you have, and obviously it's just a long this is long overdue, long time coming getting you on here. Are we stateside or are we in Canada right now?
I'm in Toronto, Ontario.
Okay, so you're still working the show or you just got done with the
I
show?
just finished it, and then I've got a real job too. And there's, I have to come to Toronto pretty often, and it's actually to drive here. It's closer for me to drive to Texas from where I live than it is to drive to the, the capital of Ontario, which is nuts.
That's crazy, dude. I think I remember Gussie saying something similar to that, like driving to St. Lawrence is longer than Fork or something crazy.
Yeah, yeah. No, Gussie and I live in the same town, and he's a little bit older than me, but we're good fishing buddies and grew up in that zone. And
Yeah.
he's kind of the reason I was like, okay, it is possible to go do from here. It's just a challenge.
Yeah. Dude, that's awesome. Is he kind of like an inspiration for you and kind of why you're chasing this thing?
Yeah, he kind of made me a few times. I did the co-angler thing with him way back in the day, when he was on the FLW Tour Opens, and he was like pretty insistent that I go with him and see it. And yeah, it helped me out a lot. And then when I was younger, like he would always whip our ass in tournaments. Like he was untouchable for a number of years at home. And then as soon as I started like getting up on, first it started with like you beat him one day of the tournament, and then it was like, okay, if you could start to compete, nose to nose with Gussie and the other hammers around us, it was like, all right, well, you ain't getting any younger. Get on the road or
Yeah.
hang them up.
I like that, dude.
But
What's it been like for you in the years now trying to adjust and learn a bunch of these southern fisheries that are so vastly different from our fisheries in the north?
man, it's so different. But it's like that. It's everything I love about fishing. Like it drives me nuts. Like going to the same spots. That's why I'm a terrible fishing guide. Like I can't do that. I can't just go to kind of the same lake all the time in the same spot. I love the adventure component of it. So, all winter I'm like beating into these back lakes that, no one fishes on my snow machine in the middle of nowhere, and then kind of just carry that same mentality going down south to a lake that's totally foreign. You get 3 days and then you got, one of the biggest tournaments of your life. But I just love that. I love the challenge part of it.
Yeah.
What I'm doing right now doesn't make any fiscal sense. It doesn't make any sense when I explain it to people that tournament fish back around us. They're like, what do you mean you're just jackpotting opens in like Texas or places you've never been or not a local? And I'm like, I just love that part. I love the pursuit part of it, and just
Yeah.
breaking down new water. And it's just so much more rewarding to me.
Yeah. Absolutely, dude. What do you think has been the most challenging aspect of some of those new fisheries? Like, is it just a feature thing or like what do you think has been challenging about it?
Yeah, I mean, we live like Lake of the Woods where I live is a Canadian Shield lake. So for the most part, everything's on structure. It's like unlimited boulders, any bottom bait, you're
Mhm.
snagged every other cast. Um, and then you go, somewhere like St. Clair where there's not a boulder in the whole damn lake.
Yeah.
Or you go to a reservoir. I mean, it's totally different. But the most challenging aspect has been the travel. Like I feel like I'm 36 now. I feel like I'm gonna die of old age in the next 2 years. My beard's turning gray. Because I tried to do this. Well, I am doing it with. Uh, I've got a business on the fishing side, making videos, podcasting, doing content, working shows for sponsors. I've got a regular, Monday to Friday job, and so I'd be like, the first open in 2023 that I went to is on or whatever Alabama, whatever that lake's called, one of the big ones, Eufaula.
You follow?
So I
Yeah.
went there. I was like, okay, I got to work Monday morning. So I did this first open of the series. Everyone had already been there, like pre-practicing, and it was, that was when there was only 5-day cutoff of pre-practice. So like the guys were living there for a month already. And I show up, I'm like, okay, I got to be at work Monday morning. Well, the first day of the tournament's a blow day. So now, the whole full field fishes Friday, Saturday. So I had to drive through the night, Saturday night and Sunday night, go
Oh,
home,
jeez.
spray the salt off my boat, and go to work the next day. Like,
Dang.
it's so, that part's been just insane. Like in 2023, I think I put 90,000 kilometers on my truck. So about 55,000 miles.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah.
That's a lot.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
a
I
lot.
do a lot of podcasts.
Yeah, no joke. I gotta ask selfishly for somebody that's been dealing with lovely truck problems for the past like 2 months straight. What's your tow vehicle, dude? Have you found one that's been reliable?
So I bought the first like new generation Tundra in 2022, and because I was like, whatever, I'll burn a little more fuel, but I'll be able to rack the miles on this thing and keep it for a few years. And that wasn't the deal. Like I would throw ignition coils all the time, and
Oh gosh.
so like I'd throw them on the interstate, in Kansas City, and wouldn't be able to get over in traffic. So in the end of 23, I bought a 3-liter Duramax diesel, and that thing's been a killer. Like it uses probably 40% less fuel, which it costs me about $1,000 in truck gas, depending on where you're going. So you start doing the math, you're saving $400 a trip. Like even with dealing with the DEF and higher diesel prices. So
That's
that three
crazy.
liter has been, my rig the last little bit.
Yeah, that's where I keep getting brought back to. Granted, I'm still in the kayak side, but just for travel's sake, like people keep saying, just get a diesel. Just seems like less problems, or anything pre 2020. That's what people keep kind of going to.
Yeah, there's
But
no right answer there. Like
no,
I just, I just had like a tax audit. So I had to explain all this stuff. It was from 23 and 24. And they're like, what do you mean your truck was 98% business? I'm like, okay, well, here's everywhere I went in 2023. Like if I put 90,000 kilometers on it, these trips account for 86,000 of those 90,000 K. Like, yeah, it's hard on vehicles.
Mhm. So on the flip, talking about some of these new southern fisheries that are just, I mean, like you follow, yeah, there's nothing like it up north.
No.
What's been challenging, but also what's been easy for you, I guess, in translating to some of these southern fisheries, something that you've gone to that like, okay, this part's kind of like home, something that is kind of made sense pretty quick.
Not structure wise, but species wise. If there's a smallmouth there, like the first open I ever did was on Cherokee Lake, Tennessee. It's 23 hours
Hmm.
from my house. Um, First open ever. Tried to sign up for all three. That's when it was the three tournaments. My Canadian credit card, like I was on it right away, and because I wanted to fish the 3 series and try to make the elites, and they're like, yeah, the credit card company calls me, and they're like, yeah, we just stopped a fraud $2,500 in Birmingham, Alabama, trying to scam your credit card. I'm like, you guys just ruined my life, man. Like, so I ended up 31 on the wait list. So I was like, well, I guess I'm not going to the opens this year. And then the one, so that was Florida, Cherokee, and Hartwell. That's when like Joey Cifuentes and Coop Gallant. That's when all those guys qualified. So I missed Florida. I
Yeah.
was like, got the call for Cherokee. I was like, yeah, whatever. Like I'll still go, even though I don't have a chance at anything. And I showed up there. I had 3 or 3.5 days to practice. Same thing. Like Coop had already been there for like 3 weeks, sleeping in a tent. So I was kind of calling him, and I knew I was lucky. I knew some guys down there that were kind of fishing buddies from back home, and got to the lake, and that was before anyone had the minnow. And like where I live in northwestern Ontario is where that's where that technique came from. I
Right.
know there's small pockets like, at Cherokee specifically where they, they call it tight lining, and there are pockets where it was popular too, but that was
Hmm.
just like cakewalk. It wasn't. I was still freaking out because I'm not used to going 4 or 5 hours in practice without a bite. Like we catch 100 bass a day every day at home. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, it was just, even though it looked different, it was still boulders. So I ended up having a good tournament there, got third, and then up until Leech Lake last year, anytime it had been a smallmouth dominated tournament, I finished in the top three in three of them, and then the top 10 in the other two. So it was like, okay, if there, it doesn't matter if it's on St. Clair, St. Lawrence River, if it's a smallmouth, I generally know how to catch them. So that if there's smallmouth around, then I'm usually fine, and don't get spun out as much like I do on largemouth.
Right. Now, and then if it is like a largemouth, dirtier water kind of dominated fishery, is that one that you've tried spending more time at, or trying to learn, or kind of what's your mindset with those kind of fisheries? Like a Eufaula.
Yeah. So, I mean, for me specifically, I have the same time to learn in every tournament, and that's the 3 days of practice you're given. Um,
Yeah.
so I can't go pre-practice or just fun fish in the U.S. and learn how to deep crank a shell bed. It's whatever I learned is during the official practice and in the tournament. Um, so somewhere like Eufaula, I I've had like a mid pack finish there my first time, and then went back. It was the first time I've ever returned to a lake for an open, and
Mm.
I just picked something simple. Like I was using a 3/4 ounce jig, ended up leading the tournament after the first day, and walked out with a top 10, just on a jig. So, Toledo Bend, same thing, just kind of like a Tyler Williams program. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, just pick up the jig and throw at everything that looks good. Because you can't, like, I drive down with my whole truck box full of tackle, all kinds of wacky stuff that, like, you know, it's way better off. And Gussie told me too. He's like, just use what you want to use and what you've caught fish on before, because it's too hard to do both. You can't use a new lure on a new lake, you know, in that tournament or in that specific practice and expect to do okay. If you're looking for new fish on a new body of water, you kind of have to use a bait that works everywhere, that you already know catches fish and know the intricacies of it. So
Right.
it's real easy to get spun out. I'm sure lots of guys will attest to that, or maybe their ego won't let them. But lots of guys are skinned in their first few opens. I'll promise you that.
Yeah. Would that kind of be your advice for somebody? Not even to say if they're from the north and going south, but any other part of the country where they're traveling to fish something brand new to them, is maybe that your first time there, steer away from the quote unquote what you should be doing and just go fish what you're confident in and just let the fish tell you the rest?
Yeah, like every lake we go to, there's always like a local bait that the lake's famous. Hartwell is famous for those
Mhm.
like high end, like jointed, like magic swimmer style baits,
Yeah.
and everyone thinks if you go there, you have to have a bucket full of them. Where, like, yeah, I did the same thing. I was only the second open I've ever been to, and like I was buying all these stupid things that I've never caught a fish on. I'm like, well, Ned rig sounds good, and just kind of went to work with that. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's baits that work everywhere. Um, if you look at the top 10 lures of any elite series, Bassmaster Open, you're going to see a familiar bait that you know how to use. And obviously, lots of times guys bullshit on that, but it's usually
For sure.
a general thing. So if you can see a couple of those baits, and there's lots of baits that just show up over and over, like a chatterbait, a jig, a minnow, like, just run with that. You don't need to light
Yeah.
the world on fire with some crazy lure, which, now that I've been doing it for a while, it's like, yeah, I want to get more dialed in, like, on, these tiny adjustments and these, like Japanese baits. And I don't have the fear anymore. Kind of got to prove myself enough where I'm not, because when you're from Canada or, a place in the world where there's not a lot of bass fishermen coming from, you have the whole support and pressure of the, community behind you. So you really just don't want to bomb.
Yeah.
But now I just go in with the mindset of like, all right, I got to try to win one of these and figure out how to win it. So
You need gear that works as hard as you do. That's why Amped Outdoors is the official power solution of the Serious Angler podcast. From unmatched battery nerd customer service to performance that thrives in extreme winter cold or summer heat, keeps you on the water longer. Click the link in the show notes to get you powered up with Amped Outdoors. Now back to the show. Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it's a weird, I guess, yeah, you kind of know it with pressure of hearing that, where it's like you have all this support, where it's like, I think at the end of the day, they don't care if you're first or, I mean, obviously they're happy if you're first, but like your difference between first and 100th, they're just happy to see you trying to chase this thing. But you feel in your mind, you're like, I got to do this for the people that are, cheering me on type of thing. Like you're in your head, the voices start creeping in when you're on the water and you're like, how am I going to explain this to people why I suck today? But I totally get that. If you can get over that fear of failure aspect, I feel like that's like one of those things mentally that makes you dangerous, where it's to learn just to not care.
yeah, for sure. And it makes it a lot easier if you have some success out of the gate. Like I got lucky landing on Cherokee where it was full of smallmouth in the middle of Tennessee. Like, so
Yeah.
it was like, okay, well, I got that one. Just let me,
Yeah.
got a little bit of
Yeah.
hardware, not a win, but, then it just kind of takes
Little gas money.
off. Yeah.
Yeah. Speaking of the bait stuff, dude, have you seen that new page? I don't know if they're still active, but they were a couple weeks ago. It's like Pro Bait Report or something like that, where they were putting these guys in the top 10 baits, whatever, on blast of like what guys are actually throwing. And you've seen that page?
I haven't seen that specifically, but I saw everyone going at Pake South, for Rayburn. He's catching them on the Koike and on the third day of the camera and held up a jerk bait on the morning of the last day, and people just attacked him. And I'm like, well, yeah, like maybe he caught someone a jerk bait and caught them all on the Koike on the last day. Like you don't know, but I mean, I always hold up, what I'm catching them on, and for me, it's
Yeah.
usually pretty easy because I'm set up enough now where my sponsors' baits are actually what I use.
Right.
Like with Crush City and Rapala VMC, there's, the spread's covered.
Yeah.
I don't
You don't need much.
I don't have to lie. Where if,
Yeah.
if your only sponsor doesn't have it or, just has subpar stuff and you're just working for them for a paycheck, then yeah, you're
Yeah.
doing some BS but I'll have to check that
Yeah.
out. That sounds like a good laugh.
Yeah. I'll have to send you the page after this, because it's quite a trip. It's pretty funny. Well, dude, so I'm gonna ask you this: being, that you've gotten to the Cherokees, you've gone to the Eufalas, things like that, and our little traveled at this rate is. Do you have a favorite lake in the South right now that you like going down to?
I mean, all of them I've only really been to once, except for Rayburn and Eufaula. I really liked the Ozarks when we were there. I know it's like the weights have been really tough there, and I might have just landed in the right creek arm or anything, but I loved that place. St. Clair that's the best smallmouth fishing I've ever had in my life, and I didn't expect that going into it. But I'm like, I'm trying to find a way to go back there and kind of justify a trip back to St. Clair, even though it's not in the South. Like I said, it's pretty much the same distance as going to Texas or Oklahoma or whatever. So
It's so crazy, dude.
yeah,
That's so nuts. Trying to fathom that part. It's just...
yeah. Oh, it was funny when we went to St. Lawrence in 2023. One of the Bassmaster guys, I was kind of in the running for, for the top 9. I think I was a few spots out when we were going into that one. And he did like one of the pre-tournament write-ups and, called me for an interview and, what's it like being in familiar water? You're from Ontario. And I was like, man, the only advantage I have to being from Ontario where I am at the St. Lawrence River is I don't have to buy an Ontario license. Like I'm like, sick. Yeah, I'll give you the interview, but I'm like clueless. And luckily that tournament worked out, and I had a good tournament there. But
Yeah.
yeah, it's funny because the perception is like, oh, Ontario, you're right. Right in the thick of the Great Lakes and all that. I got buddies from the south or co-anglers I've met over the years that are going on trips to like Lake Ontario, and they're asking me for info. And I'm like, man, I don't like it's close to me.
Couldn't help
Close to me.
That's funny, dude. Yeah, it's crazy. Just like when people, like, if for people that may not understand, just pull up a map and just clock it out. Cause it's actually, I remember Gussie saying that when he said the first time of like how Fork was closer, I went and pulled it up and I'm like, no way. And that is actually just nuts to me when you actually clock out the distance. But on the flip, dude, is there one fishery that you haven't been to that it's like on top of the destination list for you?
Champlain. Um, that's I've kind of been to the big two, St. Clair and St. Lawrence. And I've done like Sturgeon Bay, Wisconsin, but I've never been to Champlain. And back in the day, Chris and Corey Johnston kind of told us they're like, because they were doing Toyotas or Everstarts or whatever they were called, and they're like, yeah,
Mm,
that translates the best to like Lake of the Woods and that
mm,
rainy lake style. But it's so far, man. I was just looking at the Bass Nation schedule, and I signed up for a national qualifier on Toledo Bend next month, and it was I could kind of pick one tournament, and it was between that and Champlain. I've got a way better chance at doing good at Champlain, but I'm like, Toledo Bend's 24 hours and Champlain's like 27 or 28 and in the summer. So
wow.
yeah, it's just really hard to justify because all their tournaments are, you know, kind of have the same open water season as us. So it's not like I can just go in April and go fish a tournament there or go in February or anything. So it's been tough
Right.
to try to find a good excuse to go there. But that's the one that's circled.
Yeah, yeah, you'd have a great time there. That is the one that is just ridiculous, and that's why a lot of the guys, especially from the South too, they always get excited when it's on the schedule because it, like you say, gives them an excuse to get up there, and it's just the fishing's worth it when you're there.
Yeah, I'm sure
Do
by
you
the
get
time I get there, it'll just be beat to death and hard to get a limit, But
It's getting to that stage. That's for dang sure. A lot of our fisheries here. I'm in Buffalo, but I grew up on Cayuga. That was home lake, and that is kind of at that stage right now where as soon as it's ice out, it's kind of the ramps are packed. A lot of out of state plates too, St. Lawrence as well.
yeah, that one got a lot of
But
major tournament love, you know, what, 7 or 8
yeah,
years ago that kind of,
the one that Gussie almost won is kind of when it started.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, looked,
and that was kind of when things kind of started getting better. I think from a fishing standpoint, when the goby started getting more prevalent there, it's just like I think when Kevin won there with when Jordan Lee almost won it, I think that was what 15 or 16. I think they only won it with like 16 pounds roughly a day.
right.
And but when Gussie won it, it was 20 bags for everybody. But yeah, that's crazy to think. You got to get to Champlain eventually. I mean, even if it takes a flight, I'm sure like a Jody White or somebody will take you out for a day just to show you how nutty that thing is. But
Yeah, maybe he'll just throw me
um,
the keys to his boat and I'll just go beat the hell out of it.
there you go. There you go. It never fails. That's awesome. Dude, talking about the tackle stuff, you brought up, learning some of the Japanese stuff, things like that. And we actually, like, kind of how this show started stemming because I've been using like the Koiki stuff for over a year now, and I saw you posting stuff about it, and I reached out asking about like setup, things like that.
Yeah.
Um, when it comes to that kind of thing, obviously you do a lot of ice fishing,
Hmm.
and that's a lot of months out of the year where you're not in open water.
Yeah.
And so to learn all these new techniques, like how do you, and you talk about the practice windows where you kind of keep with what you're confident in. How hard is it for you to go learn some of these new things off the wall, and where do you make time for that?
I mean, now like actually physically learning a technique, um, it just doesn't take as long as it used to, with electronics and just, as you get better
Mm,
at bass fishing. So I'm not freaked out about trying to learn it. It's about trying to stay ahead of the curve and find it. So something like the koiki, I got so lucky with that one. So when I went to St. Clair in 2024 for an open, I got a buddy from back home. He fishes once a year. He fishes a big fall tournament with me, 130 boat open team tournament. And, he's just a good buddy and we have fun. And we've been fishing this tournament for, 10 or 15 years. And that year I couldn't do it. So he said, well, I'll come and do the co-angler thing with you. He had no interest in fishing as a co-angler. He just wanted to come hang out in the boat for a week and see what it's all about. Yeah. So on day 2, he drew Koya Fujita.
Oh man.
Yeah. So I had the sea urchin. We found it online. We didn't know what it was called. Like, just found a picture of it. Had a general picture, no name, nothing. And Taku was also in the top 10 in that tournament. And I was, parked beside him. And I said, hey, what do you guys call this thing? And he, his jaw dropped and he's just like, oh, and I was like, oh, yeah. I played it off like, yeah, I've been, had this thing for 3 years. I didn't say any of that, but I was like, yeah, I know. And he opens his rod locker and he's got a bunch of them rigged up. So I'm like, all right, this is Taku and Koya's hidden juice. And I bought a couple of them for, I think it was like $220 US for 3 baits. That was before Spro.
Holy smokes.
Yeah. That was before Spro was bringing them over. And there was, they were sold out in Japan everywhere. So they were really hard to come by. And then I just kind of, I knew they worked there. I messed around with them a bit at home. I caught some fish on them, but never really better than any other bait. And then just kind of, just through open source. So I'm an intel officer. That's my regular job. And I've got a lot of open source training. And, I learned to leverage that to try to get ahead of some of these bait trends. So I kind of try to learn them as fast as I can. And, they just come and go. They're like a flash in the pan now. You pretty much get a year head start on a technique and everyone's got it by the next year. So something I don't know what's next, but yeah, that was a cool one. That's, it started blowing up in Texas and then just kind of went from there. And it seems like Texas is kind of the place where baits are really refined and then goes out from there.
Yeah.
I don't remember what your question was, but that's my koiki story.
No, that's perfect, dude. I feel like, you mentioned half the battle is one, staying on top of the trend, but two, it's the fishing application of it is, I feel like, the easiest part, but it's especially the koiki, I feel like people are still dialing in the hardware aspect of it, hook and rigging. I think we're still exploring that. I'm seeing some wild ways people are rigging and catching stuff on it. And do you think the next year or two is going to be more of just this wild fuzzy stuff, or do you think there's something brand new down the pipe that we haven't seen yet?
I don't know. There's definitely going to be some weird stuff, but there's baits that are just always going to work. The minnow, every bass where I live has grown up being caught on the minnow, since the 80s. And you can't take, our old setup from 2002 and go catch fish and be competitive anymore. But there's so many intricacies now. You see the Crush City lineup. You guys don't have there's a couple other minnows we have up here in Canada, a couple of sizes, the jerks, rolling out in the US now, but just all those options, the way they're scented and the way you rig those. And that's just such a natural bait that it's always going to catch them, but you're going to have to change just make those fine tuned tweaks. So I don't know how many other crazy baits are going to come out in the next little bit. I think it's just going to be more of a kind of refinement.
Hey guys, real fast. If you are a fishing guide trying to book more trips and spend less time chasing DMs, you need to check out the Bloodknot app. Bloodknot lets anglers find, book, and pay guides all in one place. while you manage your schedule, availability, and clients from your phone. So it's less administrative work, more time for you on the water, more trips booked. If guiding is your business, Blood Knot is a no-brainer. Best part is it's free to use, extremely easy. Check out the Blood Knot app at the link below. Now back to the episode. Yeah. Well, and dude, you mentioned it to me, but for the folks, because I've gotten some questions on it too through like the DMs and things like that, like rigging that koiki style bait. What is your setup and all that stuff for throwing that bait?
I've tried it 3 different ways. One is the standard nail weight. I guess I've tried it 4 different ways. One is the standard nail weight and a big Nico hook, which I don't like at all. If you put a nail weight in that thing, you're just liable to lose it. And if you've only got a few of them, which there's not many people with like a war chest of them, you're going to lose some. The fish will rip it off and it'll sink. And that's how Koya was originally rigging it. He had like a wire nail weight through it with a Nico hook on top. But the one I use, the full cast one I just started using when I went to Texas a couple weeks ago to Rayburn, and I used, I knew I'd be dealing with giant fish, so I used a 3/0 VMC Redline heavy duty, and I just built a Jika rig. There's that new BET tungsten weight. It's black. I just used that in an 1/8 ounce and added a VMC swivel to it, and that one, like you could boat flip the 7.5 on it, and if I would have caught a 10-pounder, I would have boat flipped it too. Like you could just you could just bitch them in, 17 to 20 pound suffix fluoro on that 7.3 medium heavy myth, and that was, by the time the tournament came around, you could stuff a jig head in it, like a wide gap jig head, or do the treble thing. They do a lot of swiping and everything at it, so there's a lot of the treble was a good one for just kind of catching keepers that would like poke at it and swipe at it, in that 3-pound class. But I ended up taking a treble hook off the Rapala Jowler. They have a specific treble hook that you can't buy separately in a package. It's red line, it's coated, it's super sharp, and then it's beefed up for that big top water. So I was using that treble hook.
I like it. That's a little sneaky.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But there's, going to be a million ways for that, guys are going to be Carolina rigging that thing. Like,
oh, I'm sure they are, dude. I'm sure people are doing a pile of things that we don't even know about yet we'll see here in the next few months how much more of that transpires. But
yeah, the kid at the tackle store at Rayburn figured, it'll be good till July. he's seen so many things come and go.
Yeah, I mean, dude, my buddy just literally called me earlier this morning and was like, "Hey, dude, I'm at the shop. They literally just brought in a pile of 17s," and he's like, "Do you want one? Because it's going to be gone by noon." And I called him like, "Yeah, like I'll take 5, like send them my way." And he said, literally by 11:30, they had probably over 100 of them come in. They're all gone.
Yeah. Yeah, and then
it's crazy how the trend stuff flies off the shelves before it doesn't even make the shelves half the time.
Yeah, and then I don't know how you are with it, but I always end up with a pile of baits, by the trend that's blowing up, and then you just end up with a pile of baits that end up in a yard sale bin. Like you're just on to the next.
Yep.
That's why I love the minnow so much, because it's just always, just
always there.
It's going to be there. It's just too natural. It's like the little black marabou jig that was born around us too, and that's been catching them from 1996, and so you can still win tournaments on it where we're at. It's too natural. Like they're not going to kamikaze it all the time, but it's always going to have a place.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we just saw the classic minnow.
Something like a big spike ball. There's nothing natural about it. It's something new, and it's going to be what it's going to be. I don't think it's going to have a huge shelf life on it, to be honest.
Yeah, they're going to get used to that and know exactly what they're looking at. Something like that. I think it's a curiosity thing.
Yeah.
Still right now. Dude, so talking back on adjusting to some of the southern fisheries, do you think now with the way technology has gone, I mean, people used to say that a lot of the guys from the north, especially like the Minnesota guys, the fighters, would adjust so well to southern fisheries versus southern guys adjusting to northern fisheries. Do you think that playing field's been leveled now, or do you think that's still true or different?
Uh, I think it's pretty much even. Like, it's just whoever out there is going to put the time in and the work. Like, it doesn't
Yeah.
really matter where you're from.
Right.
I think where you live in the South matters. Like Jack York is a buddy of mine, and
Hmm.
him and I, like, we live geographically so far apart. He's a guide in East Texas, and I'm in northwestern Ontario. And I think for like 5 tournaments in a row, um, we've ended up in the same like creek arm or pocket. At some point in the day, we're going to be fishing the same stuff. Like, it doesn't matter if we're at Leech Lake or Sam Rayburn. It's
Huh.
and it's just we've kind of got the same style, but now it's kind of like, yeah, if you're good at pressured fish and you're good on the scope, then you're going to be good at smallmouth fishing. If you're good at smallmouth fishing, scoping around, you're probably going to be pretty good in Texas. It's just one of those
Yeah.
things where, or if you're good on the Mississippi River in Wisconsin, you're going to be good on the Sabine.
Yeah.
Likewise, if I don't really know anyone that's grew up on the Sabine, but they're probably going to do pretty good on the Mississippi River. So there's a lot of those
Yeah.
translate, but I don't think that's, there's not, the fishermen up north aren't any better than the fishermen are down south. It's just there's way less opportunity. So the ones that come from the north and the ones that come from Canada are the cream of the crop. Where if you're in Alabama, everyone's a Bassmaster Opens pro, and you just see the five best make
Mhm.
it. It's the same thing, but the five best have already up north have already established their place and figured out how they're going to drive 25 hours and compete in these tournaments down south. So that's the kind of way
Yeah.
I look at it.
Yeah. No, that makes perfect sense. Um, I think with that too, I'm trying to remember my train of thought was going here. Uh, like we've seen it like with the Minnesota guys. Like you see, the Keith Tumas. You've seen a lot of those Wisconsin, Minnesota guys do well on. You're talking about Sabine and some of these grass fisheries. Florida seems like Minnesota guys for whatever reason always
Yeah.
translate well to that area. Um, but yeah, in my opinion, dude, I think it's definitely the playing field has been leveled. Um,
Yeah, I agree.
but yeah, one thing I'm curious your take on though, going back to somebody that is, in your case, everything seems like a 20-hour drive now, but like somebody that's traveling to a new part of the states or a new fishery, regardless of what it is, especially the South, we don't have. I mean, Lake of the Woods is a whole different beast, but like at least here in New York, we don't have. There's no such thing as creek arms. Like we don't have those. It's all big bowls of grass.
Yeah.
And so when you look at like a Norman, a Hartwell, you look at the TVA, and you got all these different creek arms, and then you have the main lake. It can kind of be like a little bit overwhelming. Um, what's your advice to somebody that's traveling to something like that doesn't deal with all the different, I guess, like Highland Reservoirs, the crazy topographic, maps they're studying all these fisheries. When it comes to breaking that down, what would you give somebody advice to stepping on the water the first time?
I mean, it kind of comes down to what you're doing around home. Almost everyone that fishes has more than one option of a place to go. Like, switch it up around home, get used to fishing for, fish in different situations. Like, we're lucky on Lake of the Woods, there's lots of different options, but you know, we don't really have bass that like solitary smallmouth that go floating around like they do,
Mhm.
at like St. Clair. But we have lake trout that do that. And it's kind of they're chasing the bait, and it kind of aligns like that. So, even though I'd never caught smallmouth like that, I'm used to fishing like that because I've switched it up. So, someone like Coop Gallant, like he's obsessed with multi-species, and I think that's part of the reason he's so good. Like, he's seen a bunch of different environments before he started going down south. But that's the biggest advice at home. And you got it, like I mentioned, open source before, which, layman's terms, all that means is stuff available to the public, on the internet. And there's more of that now than there's ever been. So, before you even go to the lake, you should know how it lays out. You can look at a map and figure out, okay, well, that's a big basin there. If you're used to fishing New York and big basins, then that's probably going to fit you a little bit better. So maybe focus your efforts there. If you're from the Mississippi River and you're a swamp donkey, then look up this arm. So most of these lakes offer something that will kind of match your style a little bit to make you a little less comfortable. But yeah, you gotta watch some videos, and you definitely have to put in your homework, especially if you don't have any time to pre-practice, which most people don't.
Right. Love that, dude. As we start winding down, I got two things left for you.
Sure.
And to end it on the conversation of, some of these southern fisheries, new fisheries, what do you think is your biggest learning lesson so far in fishing the opens? What is the biggest thing you've taken home?
At Serious Angler, we're a half-ton truck crew, and we're towing boats all the time. You already know the deal. You load up the bed, you hook up the trailer, now you've got squat, sway, and that moment when the wind hits or a semi passes you, and you tighten up on the wheel. After looking at a bunch of options, road active suspension was the solution that made the most sense for us. It's built to help your truck feel more level and more controlled when you're towing or hauling. If you want a calmer, more confident drive to the ramp, check them out and use code SERIOUS10 for 10% off.
The biggest thing I've taken home. I mean, for me, it's just like, if you stop letting it be so overwhelming, then even though everything's totally different, it's kind of all the same. You're not fishing against like immortals. Everyone's the same, but if you don't do your homework, you're going to get steamrolled. If you don't work as hard as you absolutely can, and spend every second on the water that you're given, you're going to get run over. I mean, everyone likes to say it's easy for guys like Trey McKinney and Dylan Nutt and all those guys. Like, oh yeah, they just show up, tons of resources, tons of time on the water. But for every one of those guys you see, there's 100 you don't see that like have the same options they do, but just aren't working as hard as them. So
Yeah.
that's kind of my take on that. I don't know if that really answers your question. I kind of went on a tangent, but
No, that's perfect.
also, staying fresh, fishing new places, and trying to kind of chase a goal is what's kind of helped me from being complacent. I'm in that age where it's really easy to be complacent. So I just love the pursuit of it. I don't think that if I actually made the end goal, which I don't even have a goal, I guess I'd call it just making it to the classic, which is really hard to do if you're not in the elites, by the way. Hard to do on the elites too, but it's just that pursuit of it. Like, I don't know what the quote is or who said it, but it's not the pursuit of happiness, it's the happiness of the pursuit. So that, as long as you have something to work towards, you're gonna want to stay on the current trends. You're gonna want to do the research. You're gonna want to learn new baits every time you're on the water and new techniques instead of just going through the motions and running with the same old. So I think that's the biggest thing that happens to anglers. All anglers. No one's really bulletproof from it, but the guys that don't get complacent, it's one of the few sports where one of the few occupations where the older you get, the harder you have to work just to keep up with everyone. And I think it's really easy to get complacent, and just with how good these new kids are, we're just seeing it more prevalent now than it's ever been. So I went on a tangent
Yeah.
there, but that's my spiel.
Dude, that's perfect. That's nail on the head, and it's pretty much what Dylan Nutt was preaching on Mercer's podcast, was just the time on the water that they put in, and outworking people from, the guys that get off the water at 2 p.m. They're out dark to dark every single day, as often as they possibly can.
Yeah.
And yeah, that it could, you see all those many hours difference, and it could just be the difference of one spot that they found that you didn't find, or simply just being, it full well. People listening to this know it full well. Just the more you're out on the water, the more in tune you are with everything, where things start becoming just much more fluid. You don't have to force yourself to make decisions. They become natural. And that's the biggest key, I think, in what you're saying, is that's where the advantage is in getting, I call that the flow state, is where everything just makes sense and you don't really have to like sit and think about anything. You just kind of do. And that's kind of what those guys are doing, man. I don't think they're thinking too much about what they're doing, because they seem so lax too at the same time. And I think that's what it is, man. They know what they're doing. They've been doing it for 300 plus days out of the year.
Yeah.
And it's just another day.
Yeah, it's crazy to try to compete with them with, doing what I'm doing and what lots of guys are doing, where you just show up for your practice and you don't have time to fish every day. But, there are ways to mitigate it, maybe not beat them every time, but you can at least slug with them. And that's, that's getting out of your comfort zone in general.
Absolutely. Well, dude, last thing for you here, and I'll let you go get pampered in your Holiday Inn. Is every time we have a new guest, it's your first time here on the show, we like to end it with this question. And that is, if you could take 3 different people, sit down, have a steak and a beer to pick their brain. These 3 people, they don't have to be fishing. They could be from 1,000 years ago or alive today. Doesn't matter. Any 3 people, sit down, steak and a beer, pick their brain. Who are you going to invite?
Shane Gillis, number 1.
That is amazing.
Taylor Sheridan.
Okay.
And
he's the dude from Yellowstone, right?
Every good show, if you look at who wrote it or directed it, it's him.
Perfect.
Oh man, who's another one? Do you know who Bob Azumi is?
Oh yeah.
I'm his absolute biggest fan. I have been since I was a kid, and I just hung out with him for an hour at the boat show. He brought me one of his board games from 1988, and we're buddies now. I'll call him on the phone and everything, but he's I shouldn't be saying this on a podcast, but in like a password reset, it'll say who's your favorite athlete of all time or whatever, and it's always Bob Azumi. So he's gotta be on my list too.
Oh, that's amazing. That's so good.
Yeah, so that's my answer there. I knew you asked that question. I should have thought about it a little bit more before you asked it, but
it's all good. We like it spontaneous in the moment. I like it because I love getting the messages after the fact from guys that we've asked this to, and then they'll message after the episode like, damn, I should have said this, guy. I should have said this, and it starts to get you thinking.
I'm thinking about it now, like that'd be a wild party. Like a Zoom.
That would be pretty nuts.
It'd be like, what the hell am I doing here? Because Gillis and Azumi would be fine, but he'd be out of it a little.
Plenty of Bud Lights, plenty of laughs. You'd have a time. That's for dang sure. Yeah. Well, dude, thank you so much for taking time out. I know you're on the road, but appreciate you jumping on this thing. And like I said, long overdue getting you on the pod, and hopefully get you back on here soon, man.
Appreciate it, man. It was fun. Keep hammering. Everyone's enjoying what you guys are doing, and there's a lot of podcasts out there that are hard to listen to. Trust me, all the time on the road, I've listened to them all, and I tune into you guys often. There's a lot of juice in here and a lot of good stories. So thanks a lot.
Appreciate that, dude. Well, if you're ever 24 hours out this way, let me know. You got a place to stay in Buffalo. And
likewise, man.
Yeah. Well, dude, appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, man. See ya.
All right, guys, that is going to do it for today's episode. Mr. Jamie Bruce, good to get him on here. Has a great show himself, creates amazing media. Make sure you guys follow his socials and his YouTube and all that stuff. We'll have that linked down below. But great to get him on here. Definitely not the last time he's going to be on here. But make sure you guys look out for future episodes coming up. Again, we have Tucker Smith coming, Logan Parks. We got Andrew Benke, some real biology shows. We have much more in the hopper that we just need to get set dates on with future anglers to get on here. So look out for some of that new shows coming up. I will be traveling here in the next 2 weeks. I'm actually going down to Caddo Lake in Louisiana for the next Bassmaster Kayak event. So I'm looking for my travels there. Might stop in Tennessee along the way, fish a day or two, but looking forward to some travels, and we'll get all these podcasts stocked up, ready to rip, so that you guys are not getting a delay again like we did at the Classic. But great episode. Appreciate y'all as always for tuning in, taking time out of your day to listen to us. It means the world to us. And we'll see y'all on the next one.